Hey fam, today I'm going to be showing off a non-competitive deck, and I call it the favorite. It's my non-competitive Sidisi deck. It's 60 creatures, well, I think 60 some, actually no, 60 creatures. Yeah, it's 60 creatures and 30 lands. And it's my favorite deck to play. I bet you're surprised I didn't say like Sisei is my favorite deck to play. No, this one is like my absolute favorite to play in Commander. And I'll tell you why. It's an absolute blast to play. In my latest version, this deck can support multiple different commanders. It's got like a bunch of different sub-themes in there, and you can just swap out different commanders, and it's like super fun to play. So I'm basically going to be rambling about this deck and how much I like playing it and how I got to building it, and also like, I guess, how the deck is built. So if you're interested, I guess like find somewhere comfortable because it's going to be kind of a long video. I don't know, maybe we'll see. So how I got to building Sidisi, I don't really know what inspired me to pick Sidisi. I think I just saw Sidisi one day and I was like, that looks like a cool card, so I just bought like a whole deck. And then I was playing it at an LGS one evening and I was like, wow, this deck is like super duper fun. And then when I went home, I was like, it's got like a bunch of my like favorite cards in there. It's like Jace Vryn's Prodigy, like Flip Lily, and like Birthing Pod and like other weird stuff. So and also one of my favorite parts of Commander is seeing like weird interactions just kind of like come together. So playing this deck, it's not really dirtling, but it's just kind of like seeing a bunch of like really cool things happen. It's like very satisfying. Like eventually when I play this deck, I don't really care if I win or not, as soon as like I've had enough of my fill of like sultai shenanigans. Hashtag sultai. No, let's not add that. Then I got home and I was wondering like, what else can I add to this deck? Because I want to add like more of my favorite cards in here. And then I realized all my favorite cards are like creatures. So then I was wondering, is it possible for me to rebuild this deck without any of the non-creatures and just have it be all creatures? So I lose out some of the combos and stuff like that, but I guess the challenge was to see like, can I cheat in interaction in the form of like Creatures of Flash? And also, can I just have like a good enough game plan, I guess, to play around with? So I rebuilt the whole deck, cut all the non-creatures, put in all my favorite creatures, put in a bunch of different sub-themes, and that was super fun to play. So before I get too far, let's talk about what Sidisi does. Sidisi Brute Tyrant is a 4-mana Naga Shaman, and whenever she enters a battlefield or attacks, you put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. Whenever one or more creature cards are put into your graveyard from your library, you can make a 2/2 black zombie token onto the battlefield. So this doesn't have to come just from her own trigger abilities. If you can mill yourself any other way, you can get a zombie token. Also, it's important to note that it doesn't count how many creatures you put in at once. It counts that the only thing it checks is if you did put a creature from an ability. So let's say you mill yourself for 10, you put 10 creatures in the graveyard, you still only get 1 zombie. But if you have a way to separate that into like, let's say 10 individual mill like activations, then you can get as many zombies as you want. So one of the most common combos with Sidisi, which you lose from not having access to artifacts, is Mesmeric Orb. Mesmeric Orb is really, really powerful with Sidisi because whenever a permanent becomes untapped, those are individual triggers. So then you can get a zombie off of each creature you mill. And usually pair it with a Fatal Alchemist or also Seeker of Skybreak. I can't find my Seeker right now. And together you can just mill your deck out, get as many zombies as you want. And then you can probably do something like, then you can play this Dread Return, sacrifice 3 zombies, get like a Thassa's Oracle or Labman or something. It's a lot easier these days. But that's like the usual combo, and I can't play that anymore. No Mana Crypt, no Soul Ring, Gilded Lotus, or like Signets. All those artifact mana sources are gone, so I have to just think about increasing the amount of dorks I have to play. Also, other sources of ramp like Exploration or Growing Lights of Iflamok. So this one is like a great way to get like another Gaia's Cradle because Sidisi makes creatures so easily. Perilous Forays is a great card to use with Sidisi because you can make so many zombies that you can sacrifice them to get more basic lands out of your deck. Primal Growth is another great way to ramp because the kicker is so easy to pay because Sidisi makes so many zombies. Also stuff like Farseek and like Cultivate. Yeah, can't play those anymore. Also, there are no more tutors, so like Gerard's Orders, which is a great card. You can just find like 1 card to go to your hand, 1 card to go to your graveyard. This doesn't trigger Sidisi, by the way. Eldritch Evolution is a great card to tutor with. Birthing Pod, Demonic Tutor, Green Sun Zenith, Buried Alive, and Entomb. Those are all really great tutor cards, and you can't play any of that anymore. Or I can't play with them anymore. You can. There's also reanimation effects. So animate dead, treasure find. This is like one of my favorite cards because like the art is like really pretty. Zombify, exhume, victimize, and also reanimate. This exhume I've had for like since high school. Somehow the person who used to sell me cards had like a full play set that's signed by Carl Critchlow, so that was cool. I had like a reanimator deck that reanimates like a chroma, so that was cool. So I was glad I could get to play that card. And the Zombify I got like from the mail from Wizards like way back when, which is pretty cool. Also, some other cards I lose from not being able to play non-creatures is this beautiful Phyrexian Altar. I bought this just for Sidisi, and apparently it's like really expensive now or something. But yeah, I can't play this anymore. And also Ashnod's Altar. So both of them work really well with Sidisi just because you can make so many creatures and just use that as a source of ramp. Another really cool card is Kindred Discovery. So you just name zombies, and whenever you trigger Sidisi or attack one of those zombies, you draw a card. So this like becomes really powerful really quickly. Also, Parallel Lives is a great card to play with Sidisi just so you can get like double zombies off of each ability. You have Grisly Salvage. You can look at top 5 cards and put a land or creature card into your hand and put the rest, so this will trigger Sidisi as well. Also, like Deep Analysis, it's just like if you mill this off of Sidisi, you just have a flashback, and it's pretty cool. Moldavine Reclamation is really great because you have so many creatures, so and also you want to be like sacrificing them usually to like Birthing Pod and other effects, so this is going to help you draw a lot of cards. In general, I really like Cackling Counterpart as a card. I like cloning stuff and making tokens in general, so you can like, I don't know, clone a Wood Elves and have Parallel Lives and like double Wood Elves, which is pretty cool. There's also Death Presence. So whenever a creature you control dies, you can put X+1/+1 counters on a creature you control, where it's the power of that creature. So because, again, you're sacrificing so many cards or so many creatures, you can be like pumping creatures and stuff like that. And another just like card I had to cut was Tamiyo, Collector of Tales. Her static is like semi-useful, where spells and abilities your opponents control can't cause you to discard card or sacrifice permanents. You want the plus because you're milling the top 4, and you want the minus because it regrowths things that Sidisi or Tamiyo herself mills, so she's pretty useful. So we can't play those get cut. And lastly, we have Interaction that we can't play anymore. So just like stuff like Naturalize, Putrefy, Negate, Counterspell. Also, this card I really like at one point is Lazotep Plating. It's like really funny that you can like give things hexproof, but you can also get a zombie token out of it. So those were all the cards I cut from the first version of the deck. Before I show you guys what I added to the deck after I cut all those cards, I just want to show you how big this like potentials cards, like things I want to play in this deck is. It's like a super fat stack of like cards that I want to play all of them in this deck, but there's not enough space. So one of the cards that automatically goes in the deck is Umori the Collector. It came out a little bit after I restructured the whole deck, but I was like, when I first read the restriction, I realized like, oh, this just goes into the deck. So that's cool. I've never played him before though, so. The first tribal is zombies, of course, because Sidisi herself enables so many zombie like synergies. So Gissa and Geralf is really cool. I like Cemetery Reaper because Cemetery Reaper can exile cards and you just get more tokens out of it. Lord of the Undead is one of my favorite cards. I have this card for like ever now. It's a 9th edition like foil, which is cool because back then they were like white borders. So then when you get a foil one, they become black borders. So it's the only way to get black borders of certain cards. And Lord of the Undead's cool because Lord of the Undead can like tap and like get back zombie cards. So you can like sacrifice them and get effect, like sacrifice them and get them back of Lord of the Undead. Gleaming Overseer was a new add from War of the Spark. I just like Amass as a mechanic. I think it's not as good as like the other zombie like producers, but it's kind of cool that Gleaming Overseer can give zombie tokens like Hexproof and Menace. Also, this includes Eternal Skylord. So Eternal Skylord is another amass card, but it gives all my zombie tokens flying. And I think a lot of people asked me if I played Wonder, and for some reason, I just don't really, I wasn't really interested in Wonder as much as like the idea of having Eternal Skylord enable the flying. A lot about this deck is just like cards I really like. A lot of the choices here aren't really optimal. It's just like, I like the art, or I think the mechanic's cool. I don't know, so that's like kind of like why I picked some of these cards. Like for Gleaming Overseer, I really like the horse. It's like super cool looking. Like, look how sick that is. There's also Diagraph Captain, which just basically pumps all your zombies, and whenever another zombie dies, you can make someone lose a life. There's Lich Lord of Unks. So this makes players lose life and also mills for each zombie that you control. And you can make like zombie wizards too, which is pretty cool. There's also Vengeful Dead. I really like Onslaught as a block. I think I started around Onslaught-ish, so then like just seeing these cards are like very nostalgic to me. I think a lot of people who play zombies will also like really like cards like this. Like if you played Magic back then, like there was a lot of like Zombie War Chief, I think, Undead War Chief, I think, like cards like that that are just really nostalgic. And then I also got like this set for the God Eternals, which I think are really cool. Just like having zombie gods. When they first made these zombie gods, I actually really like this treatment as like from a design perspective. But also the idea of zombifying those Amonkhet gods was like really cool to me. And of course there's like Liliana, Heretical Healer, which is like a flipwalker. And like when I first saw this Lily come out, like I absolutely love the art, and like the backside is also super cool. Like look how boss she is, and she gets like all these zombies. And I just like the idea of like creatures being able to flip into planeswalkers. I think that was like a really cool like mechanic they added in MTG Origins. So those are zombies. Then because I cut all the artifact and spell ramp, then I had to add sources of mana from creatures. So this includes stuff like Skull Prophet, which was a new add from Ikoria. It's great because you can just mill yourself for 2 and just get zombies that way. There's Wood Elves. This is a beautiful Wood Elves by Rebecca Guay. Like anything by Rebecca Guay is super great. And you'll see how this plays into like another theme that I really like. There's also Incubation Druid. I really like +1/+1 counters as like a mechanic, so Incubation Druid is like an easy add. Also, Incubation Druid adds colored sources of mana and multiple like pips of it, so really useful. There's Kior's Follower, which is really cool. I like the art. I like Merfolk. I tried to put more Merfolk into this deck, but I couldn't fit any more like creatures in here. So there's like a really tiny Merfolk sub-theme. But also like the art's cool, like the full art, like the kind of full art treatment of this. Beast Collar Savant is one of my favorite cards. It's just like funny that you can like have a haste ally elf dude that like makes mana to cast creature spells, and the whole deck is creatures, so like that's pretty sick. This is one of the best cards in the whole deck. It's Somber Ball Sage. Basically, as soon as you play this thing, you can just enable all your creatures. She taps for 3 mana of any one color to play only creature spells, and again, whole deck is creatures, so she's great. I also have Gyre Engineer. Gyre. I think it's just like a cool card. I know 3 mana to add 2 is not like a great like cost for a dork, but I just like the Simic symbol, and like looks cool, and you can add like Simic pips. Also, I have Mara Leaf Pixie. This is a new one from Eldraine. I really like the art. 2 mana to add green or blue, and she's a flying like fairy. It's like cool. So those are all the creature ramps I have in the deck, and I'm gonna add more in the next version, but this is what I had. And you're probably wondering why Mara Leaf Pixie. Well, it's because I have a fairy sub theme in here, and also just like the art's really cool. Most of the deck is like the art's really cool, and that's why I'm playing him. I think like a lot of people who played Magic around Lorwyn, I really like fairies. So this includes like stuff like Spellstutter Sprite. I have played Spellstutter Sprite in as many decks as I can, and I played Spellstutter back in like Standard, and then like I tried it in Extended, and then I tried it in Modern. I will play Spellstutter Sprite in as many decks as I possibly can. And surprisingly, Spellstutter Sprite is pretty good in Commander. I think even like countering just 1 CMC Path to Exiles or Swords to Plowshares, or like other 1 CMC cards is like really strong, and if you can get more, it's like just kind of crazy. This also from the Lorwyn set is Sower of Temptation, another one of my favorite cards. As soon as I saw this card spoiled back then, I was like, yo, that is sick. I need that. And I had like a ninja deck. So it doesn't really work with ninjas, but it just like the idea that you can like kind of get it back and like change the control of it. It's like not the fastest thing you can do, but it was like super cool. Another really cool card I added to this deck is Glenelendra Pranksters. Look at this like beautiful foil by like Omar Reyhan. This is like, I don't know, to me like peak Lorwyn art. I really like this card because you can play a spell on your opponent's turn and then you can bounce one of your own creatures back to your hand. So if you have something like, for example, Brazen Borrower or Hypnotic Sprite, you can basically like, let's say you petty theft something and then you flash in Brazen Borrower, then later in the game you can like flash in another creature, you put Brazen Borrower back in your hand so that you can like petty theft something again. So this enabled a lot of really cool things you can do, and you'll see there's a bunch of other cards with flash. Also, just not to skip on these are such cool cards from Eldraine. I love the adventure mechanic, and I love that they're fairies. I think when they're a little cheaper, I'm gonna get the storybook version. I love the art for them, but for now, this is what I can afford, and this is what I have. And there's also Fairy Harbinger, another one of my favorite cards. When you played tribal decks back then in Lorwyn, like this is such a cool card. You just flash her in at end step, get like Mistbind Click, tap down all their lands and keep beating, and then like you can I think there was ways that you can like Mistbind Click the Mistbind Click and then like just keep tapping out their things and tempo them and beat them with like fairies. Like to me that's like peak Magic. Of course I like Mistbind Click. And Fairy Formation is a cool card. I just found this in one of my precons I bought, and I was like, this seems pretty good. You can tap 4 mana to make a blue fairy creature and also draw a card. So when you have like a Gaia's Cradle out, this is just pretty nutty. Also just like draw sources in this deck is pretty important because you don't have spells to do that for you anymore. And lastly, of course, there's Una, Queen of the Fae. I'm not sure if I like this one more or the other, like the original art. I think the original art has like a cooler perspective, but this is also super cool too. But of course you have to have Una in this deck. She sort of synergizes, I guess. Not really. She's just a cool card, so I just wanted to have Una. So that's the fairies in this deck. So those were the fairies of the deck, and I'm gonna show you some things you can do with that Glenelendra Pranksters. So there's Murderous Rider. This is just like a beautiful, beautiful card. The art is amazing. It reminds me of like Yoshitaka Amano. It's like a beautiful card. I just like that, and it's just like a strong ability. Also Murderous Rider is a zombie, which is kind of important because just like synergizes with the other zombie effects. Or if you mill Murderous Rider off Sidisi, you can just like use a Lord of the Undead or like Gissa to like replay or put back in your hand, and you can use the Swift End again. There's also another one of my favorite cards. This is my favorite since like Ravnica. It's Plax Manta. It's just like nobody knows about this, but it's a 2 mana creature of flash. It's like a beast, and when it ETBs, creatures you control get Shroud. And also when Plax Manta ETBs, you sacrifice it unless you pay green to play it. So this is like a super cool like little trick that I have to protect my creatures, and they're always gonna be trying to get rid of my creatures because they're all like pretty strong. So just like a good piece of interaction. Pseudo interaction is Siren Storm Tamer. I really like this card from Ixalan. I played a little bit of limited, but I just like 1 mana flying men with like the ability to sack and counter things that target your stuff is really cool. I like pirates, and I would like to kind of have more pirates in the deck, but just not enough space. As I mentioned before, Mystic Snake is one of my favorite cards, and I love that they reprinted Mystic Snake. Later, I'll show you what the reprint looks like. There's also Void Mage Husher. The art's really cool. Again, this is like peak Time Spiral art. Like the cool like like the super big headdresses, and just like kind of like this gloomy like this not really vibrant palette. It's like just a really cool Time Spiral like style, and I love this card. It's super cool. You can counter when the ATBs, you counter an activated ability, and you can just like bounce it back to your hand whenever you play a spell. Just like super cool. And of course on Time Spiral we end with Venser. Venser is like another one of my favorite cards. Venser has been in a lot of my decks, and this is another one where like I don't know if I like the original better or this one. I think I like the original better. But this is like a cool way to just bounce a spell on a stack. You can bounce a permanent. Just like so useful. Super good card. played it. I played it in one of my favorite standard decks. Back in Time Spiral, where like you had Dismal Failure, which is like a 4-mana counter spell, and the player discards a card, and you play like Dralnu in it, and like Venser was just like a good card in it that you can use to bounce cards and stuff. The Mystic Snake reprint is also Frilled Mystic. Frilled Mystic, we got our Lizard Wizard. It's also an elf. When she ETBs, you counter a spell. And she's great because she fits in with it. She fits the elf sub-theme I have. I love elves. Especially this one, Savra, Queen of the Golgari. She's like one of my favorite cards. When I first saw her in Ravnica, I was like, yo, she's so dope. Like look at her. Like just look at the art. Like how cool is this? And whenever you sacrifice a black creature, you can pay 2 life, and each other player will have to sacrifice a creature, which is like I think the most I think this is the strongest part of her ability. And the second part is you can also gain 2 life if you sacrifice a green creature, which happens less because most zombies are black and there's not enough green creatures for me to sacrifice. On the note of Golgari, there's also Golgari Guildmage. This is a beautiful card. I love I like all the guild symbols on cards. I'll try to play as many as I can. And this is surprisingly useful, even though the abilities are kind of like expensive. You have like a 5-mana sack a creature, return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand, which is useful. You can also tap 5 to put a +1/+1 counter on a creature. So this can, like, if you really need it, you can enable an Incubation Druid with it. And then you have Fauna Shaman. This is like a really strong card just in general. I think I don't have to explain why Fauna Shaman is really strong, but Fauna Shaman is really strong in this deck because I can discard a creature card and then turn it into a form of interaction. A lot of people get surprised whenever like they play something and I have like a response to it because I can Fauna Shaman into like a Frilled Mystic, a Mystic Snake, or like a Spell Stutter. To find elves, there's also this card. So it's like the Fairy Harbinger, the Elvish Harbinger is another like beautiful like Lorwyn card. Just like look at the art again. And I also like that she's a dork. She can add one of any color. So just like one of my favorite cards. Also, there's Imperious Perfect, Imperious Perfect. Another one of my favorite cards. You can pump all the elves and you can make elf tokens. It doesn't really synergize with like Sidisi or so. I just like Imperious Perfect. I also really like when Lauren first introduced the elves, there's like the armor like she has is really cool, and the little horns she has and like the pink hair. Like, is that where I got the pink hair from? I don't know. It's just a cool card. And then there's also Underrealm Witch. This is kind of a new card. This is from the new Ravnica sets. I don't remember their names anymore. But this one is whenever you draw a card, you can look at the top 3 cards of your library, and then you put one into your hand, the rest in your graveyard. So this one you can imagine like really synergize with CDCs because it turns every one of your draws into another zombie basically. And this can get really crazy, and I'll show you how. I also have a Pollen Bright Druid. This is like adds a +1/+1 counter or lets you proliferate, so kind of useful. And then there's also Azoni. As I mentioned before, her Undergrowth ability is amazing in this deck. And also you can sacrifice another creature and gain 1 life and draw a card. Azoni really synergizes with another elf from Eldraine, which is a Yara. So if I have a Yara out and like 30 creatures in the graveyard, I can play Azoni and then get 30 insects, and which will trigger a Yara 30 times to deal 30 damage to each opponent, and I gain 30 life. Also, a Yara can just sack a black creature and let me draw a card. Also, more elves I wanted to show is Momor Vig, one of my favorite cards from Ravnica. I like all the legends from the original Ravnica set, but this is really cool. Just like you can play blue-green creature and just keep fetching stuff. And then Prime Speaker Vanifar, which is just like a birthing pod on a creature, which is amazing. I can't believe they printed this, but it's super cool. So those are the elves. Another elf card I want to add is Jarad. You can imagine how strong Jarad is again in a deck with 69 creatures. And 69 creatures. Jarad will ATB with +1/+1 for each creature card in my graveyard. And also you can sacrifice another creature to make each opponent lose life to the sacrificed creature's power. And also I can recur him from the graveyard if I sacrifice a swamp or a forest. So Jarad ends up being like my win con a lot of the time because I basically I can put like a lot of creatures into my graveyard really easily because of Sidisi. And then I can get a card like Night Howler. So I can either play Night Howler on its own or play or bestow Night Howler onto a creature, and then Night Howler gives +1/+1 plus X to the enchanted creature, or it has that power where X is the number of creature cards in all graveyards. So I play Night Howler, sacrifice Night Howler, and kill the table. Another way that I end up winning a lot is Crater Hoof Behemoth. I think this is just like pretty obvious and like pretty expected in a creature heavy deck. And you can also just like Crater Hoof and then use Gerard to eat the things that it pumps. There's also Tishana, Voice of Thunder. So Tishana is one of my favorite cards. I think for some reason I just really like just like Simic cards and just like Simic Merfolk Legends. So Tishana ETBs and draws cards for each creature I control. You can imagine if I have like a Zoni with like 30 insects, you just play Tishana and Tishana becomes like a 30 something, and then I can Gerard Tishana. Also, I can play Tishana while Underrealm Lich is in the battlefield, and each individual trigger is gonna, or each individual draw is gonna trigger Underrealm Lich and give me a zombie for each draw, which is really strong. Essentially, it just flips over my deck. It lets me do whatever I want with it. And I also won't die because of Underrealm Lich. I won't continue to draw because it's a replacement effect, or it's replacing the draw with the ability. There's also Molder Hulk, which is just like a cool card that it's a cool regrowth effect on a creature with undergrowth. So it usually just costs black and green. There's also Sewer Nemesis. And people don't really see Sewer Nemesis that often, but when it ETBs, you choose a player, and then its power and toughness is equal to cards in the chosen player's graveyard, and then whenever that player plays a spell, that player mills a card. So people expect me to use Sewer Nemesis on other people, but I actually do target myself, because every single time I cast a creature, I just mill a card, trigger Sidisi, get a zombie, and you can imagine how big Sewer Nemesis is going to get with like a Gerard at play. There's also Gravebreaker Lamia, a new card from the new Theros set. It's just like an entomb effect on a creature, which is useful. So what I usually do is Gravebreaker Lamia like a Gaia's Cradle, and then use Molder Hulk to get that Gaia's Cradle back. There's also Lazav. I always like all Ravnica legends. I just like Lazav. I think he's cool. Another like really cool like note here is my favorite legend of all time is Razia, and here's like a mask of Razia, I believe, and I should have missed it, but here's Razia. So I like Surveil as a mechanic. It's really cool. You can trigger and get a zombie out of it, but then you can use Lazav to like copy a thing. Sir Conrad is a legend from Eldraine, which is useful. Whenever a creature dies or a creature goes in the graveyard, Sir Conrad deals 1 damage to each creature, and you can also make each player mill a card. So you can imagine how these two just have a lot of synergy together. There's also a lot with Giant. Undergrowth, deal 1 to target opponent for each creature card in a graveyard. You can imagine if I have my other zombie effects, I can just like Undergrowth, deal 20, and then like sacrifice it and like get it back with another like Gisa or Geralf. I have Uro. Uro's just cool. I wanted to join the squad and just play Uro in the deck. Also play Yarok. Yarok just doubles all the ETB triggers, so like you can imagine like Tishana just drawing like twice as many times, and you can also combine that with a Thassa Deep Dwelling, so then an end step you can just bounce like a Wood Elves and then get like 2 more lands out of it. You can also do that with an Acidic Slime, which is like an easy catch-all to destroy permanents. And also there's this Hatchery Spider. So the Undergrowth is whenever you cast, you reveal the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of creatures in your graveyard, and you can put a green permanent among them onto the battlefield. So that's pretty cool. There's also House Guildmage. I always wanted to use this, but I never ultimately did. But I like Surveil again as a mechanic, and I also like the top effect. It's kind of cool. I also like Guildmages. And lastly, I have Soul of New Phyrexia. So this is like kind of like a form of interaction. So if I mill Soul of New Phyrexia of Sidisi, I can exile them from the graveyard and give all my permanents indestructible until end of turn. So then after that, I haven't really updated the deck for a while, and then Kaldheim came out, and I was like wondering, I don't really know how I got to this idea as well. I think I was just chatting with Shivam on Twitter, and I guess maybe us talking about precons made me wonder, like, is it possible for me to rebuild this deck where I can support different commanders I can swap Sidisi with, but still have the whole deck be cohesive and like work together? So I also really like a bunch of cards from Kaldheim. I thought they were super cool. The goal is still to add as many of my favorite cards into the deck, and also add the new Kaldheim cards, and also support different themes where like playing different commanders isn't just like a commander swap with like staples, but actually like meaningfully leverage those commanders and like have the deck play different like a precon. That's a lot. So I'm gonna I'm going to show how that works. So here are the most recent updates I made to the deck since Commander Legends and also Kaldheim. So one of the things I added from Commander Legends is Ghost of Ramirez de Pietro. This card is like amazing with Sidisi because if you connect with both of them and Sidisi mills 3 things, Ghost can put one of those cards back in your hand. So it's getting lands back into your hand is pretty difficult, but Ghost can solve that now. So Ghost can put lands back so you can keep ramping or like keep playing lands, or he can get any creature card you mill off of Sidisi. So Ghost is like a great card to add to the deck. Also, another commander I added to the deck is Silas Wren. I really like Silas. I had a Silas Timna deck, and I was wondering, something I always wanted to add to this deck is like an artifact sub-theme. So one of the challenges I wanted to try and like solve finally is making a good like artifact sub-theme with this deck. And I figured having Silas Wren as one of the partners, potential partners, could push me into doing that. And then to partner with Silas Wren, I added Reyhan, Last of the Abzan. It makes this a sultai pair. Also, I can pair him with Ghost of Ramirez. And I also increased the +1/+1 sub-theme within this deck to really synergize with both of these. So immediately, or first to show how these two work together, I'm going to move Ghost like over here. For these two, I added a lot more modular effects. So like Arcbound Ravager, of course, Arcbound Worker, Etch Oracle, Crystalline Crawler. There's also Arcbound Slith, Arcbound Reclaimer, Mindless Automaton. If you have Reyhan out on the battlefield, sacrificing creature modular will just double the amount of +1/+1 counters because it counts modular and counts Reyhan's ability. So if, for example, if I have an Arcbound Ravager, I can sacrifice this worker to give Ravager +1/+1, but then modular will give another +1/+1, and Reyhan will give him a +1/+1. So then I'll get +3/+3 onto Arcbound Ravager, and then I can keep going from so on. And then afterwards, I can attack with Silas and get back the Arcbound Ravager. And I tried to find as many cards I can play with modular. I think there's an Arcbound Stinger somewhere around here as well, which is a 1-mana 1/1 flying with modular. And Etch Oracle is like a really nostalgic card for me. I started around like Onslaught, Mirodin, 5th Dawn, Kamigawa like block. So the Etch Oracle was like on booster packs, and I remember seeing Etch Oracle and thought like, wow, what a cool looking card. So I just got this foil, and I think this is beautiful, and like it's a cool effect. And also removing 4 +1/+1 counters to make myself draw 3 is like a great effect. This deck, as I mentioned earlier, kind of struggles with drawing, so I like anything that lets me draw. Crystalline Crawler is also a card I added. It's pretty cool. You can remove +1/+1 counters from the Crawler to add 1 mana of any color. So you can like sacrifice things to give it +1/+1 and like play bigger spells. And Mindless Automaton, I didn't like the old art, but this new one's really cool because it looks kind of like a masterpiece. I don't know if you can see it well. But ETBs with 2 +1/+1 counters on it, and you can discard a card and put a +1/+1 counter on them. So this can enable like some things I want to put into the graveyard, like let's say a Genesis or something. And then you can remove 2 +1/+1s to draw a card. So another means to draw. I think sometimes depending on the board state, I actually don't want him to like survive. So I want to play Mindless Automaton, sacrifice him, and then like attack of Silas to recast Mindless Automaton to draw more cards. Oh, here's my Arcbound Stinger. So also to support the artifact sub-theme, I added mirrors. I love mirrors. When I first saw mirrors, I thought they were really cool creatures. And also this deck is like super mana hungry, so I wanted to increase the amount of dorks I had or increase the amount of mana generation I can have. So these are great. They're also great fodder to sacrifice, so then Silas can recur them. Also, there's Sad Robot, just like a great card. I think Sad Robot's been a little outclassed lately with the new commander cards, but he used to be a staple. And just like a great card to sacrifice and recurve Silas again. This also includes Noxious Gearhulk. Just like look at how cool the masterpiece looks. Baleful Strix is like one of my favorite cards. Sylphok Replica is just like a cool, like, I don't know, another artifact creature that I can sacrifice and destroy artifact or enchantment. So it's sort of like removal. And then Phyrexian Metamorph is a great card. So Phyrexian Metamorph is really interesting because you can Phyrexian Metamorph like a legendary to get the ATB, and then sacrifice and have the Metamorph die, and then you can recast it with Silas. And adding all of these artifact cards, I got to add back one of the elves I really wanted to play, which is Glissa the Traitor. So Glissa is whenever a creature an opponent controls put in the graveyard from battlefield, you can return an artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. So I've added a lot more ways to make my opponent sacrifice things. But you can imagine like this in a Savra and like let's say a Noxer's Gearhulk, I can sacrifice a Gearhulk, trigger Savra, pay 2 life, everyone sacrifices a creature, and I can get back another artifact creature. So I'm glad I get to play Glissa, and also to play more into the +1/+1 theme, I also have another pair of commanders, which is Ukkima Cazur, and I'm actually playing Cazur for his ability, so that's pretty cool. If I can play Cazur on the battlefield, all these modular creatures are a lot better. I can just keep accruing +1/+1 counters, but also like that it works out well for things like Mindless Automaton, Crystalline Crawler, or Etch Oracle to keep building +1/+1 counters to let me draw cards. So you can see how like this pair works really well, and also this pair works really well for the new cards I've added to this deck. And I can swap out the commanders at any point to like really leverage this. And Sidisi is still always surprisingly the strongest option, because Sidisi just ripping all those cards in the graveyard just turns out to be really good. Also, to support the +1/+1 theme, I added things like Fertilid. I replaced Craterhoof Behemoth with Cultivator of Blades because I felt Craterhoof was like a little too generic, and I really wanted to play into the elf sub theme, or just like the things I've had. So like having a Fabricate is cool because that works my artifacts sub theme. He's an elf, so plays well with my elves, and sort of like does the same thing as a Craterhoof Behemoth. I finally get to play Master Biomancer. I keep putting this into a deck, and I keep cutting it, but this time I can play it because all the modular effects and +1/+1 counters really plays well to his ability, and also he's an elf. And then I also have Ezri. Ezri, again, just like works really well with all the +1/+1 counters, and he's an elf as well. A quick little update from Zendikar is I get to play the really cool creatures that can also double as lands. I think Tangle Flora Hedron is not like a great card. I just probably should play like a basic land, but it's cute, and I like flip cards, so it's cool. Glasspool Mimic is like really good, and also just like really pretty. So the last sub theme I wanted to add, or the last thing I wanted to show, is commander that you can swap into, and it's Jorn, God of Winter. So Jorn, normally if you don't play him as your commander, he's just a good way to get more mana back for your second main phase, because when he attacks, you untap all your snow permanents. So I added as many snow cover lands as I could. So snow cover island, ice tunnel, Rimewood Falls, snow cover forest, yeah, and more. So I tried to add as many snow-covered lands to enable a Jorn. And I also have Priest of the Haunted Edge, so you can tap and sacrifice him to kill a creature, and then you can recast him with the backside of Jorn. So if I'm playing Sidisi, I can cast the backside of Jorn instead as an artifact to recast all my snow permanents that I mill. Also, I have Drogir Necromancer, so I think it's Drogir or Draugir, I don't know. This Necromancer dude is cool. Whenever a non-token creature an opponent control would die, I can exile it and put an ice counter, and I can play those cards, so that's cool. To enable more of those sacrifice effects, I added Eradicator Valkyrie. It's just like beautiful card again. Also, there's Boast, so I can I can just attack with Eradicator Valkyrie and just like sacrifice a creature and force everyone to sacrifice a creature. So with a Savra, I can like force a double sacrifice. I can sacrifice my modular creatures. Eradicator Valkyrie is just like a really cool card. And of course, I have Tergrid, God of Fright. I have to have Tergrid. Right now, Tergrid's in Fright Thief, but whenever I play Sidisi, I move her back in. Tergrid is just like another of my favorite cards. And the last thing I added from Kaldheim is Lathril. Lathril is playing really well into the elf sub-theme, and just like another really cool card. So if I use those +1/+1 counters and effects to pump her power, you can imagine how strong she can be. And that's the deck. I hope that inspires you guys to go like build weird decks like this, and also take on the challenge of adding different themes, or like building your deck in a way that can support different commanders. I think it was a really interesting challenge, and I think it really paid off. So till next time, bye bye.